Hello, everyone. So earlier this year, President Obama, working with world leaders from the European Union and the United Nations, negotiated a deal with Iran intended to stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The deal has become highly contentious, to say the least, with many people supporting and many people rejecting it. Since the average American is not a nuclear physicist or a military strategist, it can be very confusing listening to so many people arguing back and forth. Supporters say that it would block Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon for at least the next decade or even longer, and that if they broke the agreement, it would still take them over a year, as opposed to the couple of months it will take them without the deal in place. Critics say that this deal essentially hands a dangerous regime the nuke. But both can't be true, so which is it? Spoiler alert, I have read the deal in its entirety, but I would like to examine both sides of the argument for fairness. And let's start with the critics. First, and perhaps easiest to deal with, are the Republican lawmakers. Now, I could be cynical and say that they don't support it just because Obama was involved, but I'm going to try to be a little bit more fair here. There are some reasons that have been mentioned in numerous places. First, they don't trust Iran. Okay, fair enough. Not the friendliest place. Second, Iran has repeatedly stated that Israel shouldn't be allowed to exist and they want to wipe it off the face of the planet. And since Israel is our ally, this is a matter of serious concern. Third, and perhaps most importantly, they claim that the deal has no consequences if Iran breaks it, and that it gives them the weapons technology needed to create and launch a nuke, and that the economic relief of lifting sanctions will allow them to expand their operations throughout the Middle East. So let's run through these real quickly. Starting with don't trust Iran. Luckily, as the president has stated several times, this deal doesn't require trust. It includes rigorous and continuous monitoring of all known Iranian nuclear facilities, plus, it details steps for inspection if any secret facilities are discovered or even suspected. Since the nuclear process is being monitored all the way from mining to enrichment, storage, and export, this really leaves very little room for secrets. Even a hole in the ground that looks like it could be from Iranian mining triggers an investigation. Enemy of Israel. Well, sure, we definitely don't want the enemy of Israel, enemy of our ally, to have a nuke, right? This one ties into the final one, though, which is that this deal would give Iran no consequences, weapons technology, and economic relief. First, the consequences for breaking the deal are actually pretty severe and rapid. The U.S. would actually have unilateral authority to snap all UN sanctions back into place, no vote required by the Security Council. That has never been done before, and it would be the fastest reinstatement of sanctions ever allowed in such a deal. Now, as for weapons technology, there is a small amount of truth to this. The deal does lift arms embargoes, except those related to nuclear weapons. Now, there are countries openly trading with Iran, so hypothetically, Iran could get the necessary detonation and launching technology already. And they're just months away from having the payload. Now, under this deal, they would not have the payload and wouldn't have any better access to detonation and delivery tech. But let's say hypothetically they could somehow jury-rig a missile to carry a nuclear payload, despite all the weapons experts saying they can't. Well, without the deal, they've already got missiles, and they'd have the payload pretty soon. They wouldn't be able to launch in America without an ICBM, but Israel is pretty close. Without the deal, Israel could be gone by this time next year. Let that sink in for a minute, okay? Gone. Finally, the economic relief. Now, the sad fact is, America doesn't rule the world. Wait, that's actually probably a good thing. Anyway, my point is that many of the countries that signed on to the sanctions only did so because they wanted a nuclear deal. And some have already indicated that if the deal fails, they're going to lift their sanctions because they want to trade with Iran. Now, also, Opposed to the deal, in addition to the Republican lawmakers, are Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, for basically the reasons listed above, and President Netanyahu, and I apologize if I butchered that, of Israel, who started sending panic tweets seconds after the deal was announced before he had even the possibility to have read it. Now, there is also a video circulating Facebook that smells of propaganda from PragerU making all sorts of dubious comparisons to the Nazi appeasement of 1938. I really urge you to read both documents before believing this nonsense. I read them both. They're both on paper, and that's about where the similarity ends. Now, the very first link that I provided gives both a breakdown of the deal and an option to read the full text, but I will sum it up for you. So, sanctions get lifted as soon as Iran shows it's cooperating, and all 4 potential pathways to a nuclear weapon are effectively blocked. If Iran violates the deal, sanctions snap back into place, boom. And the blocking of the pathways takes them from where they are now, being currently just a couple of months away from being able to have the payload ready, to a year. So let's say 3 years from now they break the deal, it's going to be another year before they even have the ability to fuel a nuke. Now, we've talked about who opposes the deal: lawmakers, President of Israel, and some guy at an online university. But who supports it? Well, other lawmakers for one thing, but quite frankly, I don't find lawmakers to be all that convincing, especially since it's almost entirely along party lines. The Republicans are against it, and the Democrats are for it, with a couple of notable exceptions. So who else supports it other than politicians? Well, here's an open letter from 36 retired U.S. military brass who support it. Oh, and remember the Israeli president that opposes it. His military and security officials feel differently. They support it, and they've written him a letter urging him to support it. But that's all military folks, and most of them are retired. Sure, this is a military matter, but it's very largely about nuclear physics. Now, I am not a nuclear physicist. Big shock, right? But I do understand the very basic principles behind nuclear power generation and nuclear weapons. But this deal is very detail-oriented, and a lot of it is way, way over my head. So I decided to see, instead of what politicians say about it, what nuclear physicists have to say. Well, first, 2 of them wrote the darn thing. Okay? Second, over 24 top scientists around the U.S. have praised the deal, including scientists who have made nuclear weapons for America. So, to conclude all of this, I'm going to finally weigh in with my thoughts. Without this deal, Iran gets a nuke. Period. And pretty soon. The opponents are nearly all politicians, at least the ones I was able to find, while the supporters include politicians, diplomats, military, security officials, and nuclear physicists, for crying out loud. Now, while I encourage anyone who is undecided to read the bill, ultimately, without a strong background in nuclear physics, you're going to have to rely on expert opinions to help you form yours. And, well, the people who have been running America's nuclear program, they're probably about the most expert opinions you're going to find. Now, in addition to the inline links, some of the information used in this presentation come from the following sources, all of which will also be listed in the video description. Now, I understand this is a very contended issue, and it's very serious, so if any part of this was unclear, feel free to contact me via Facebook or through the YouTube channel. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.